This is Michael Wilson. We're looking at the issue of homelessness and homelessness politics and voter frustration beginning to drive what's going on in local elections in the United States. Now, the Bible acknowledges the fact that homelessness is an issue and it instructs us to help those who are poor and needy, including those in homeless situations. A lot of people think, oh, well, Jesus did or didn't, want us to do something. But Jesus could identify with homelessness in his ministry. In Matthew, Jesus states, he said this himself, even animals have a place to call home, but he had nowhere to lay his head. He stayed in the homes of whoever would welcome him, and sometimes he stayed outside. He was born in a stable and even spent his last night before his crucifixion outside in the garden. The Apostle Paul was also sometimes in homeless situations. So God does expect his people to help those who are homeless. The law directly addressed care for those in need. In Leviticus, God commands his people help support those who have no home and cannot support themselves. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and are unable to support themselves among you, help them as you would a foreigner or a stranger, so they can continue living among you. The Lord Jesus rebuked those who kept the outward form of religion, yet did not care for the poor. So it's interesting that in local politics, they're beginning to recognize that homelessness is an issue, and it's a potent political issue in local elections, particularly when it's coupled with concerns about crime. So the homelessness situation is kind of a big furball, let's say. It's got many, many layers to it. One of the layers is the homeless typically do not have a job and aren't working. And then housing may or may not be affordable to them. And compounding it, they may have mental illness issues, and they may have addiction issues, alcohol, or any number of the drugs. And that's being compounded by municipalities, local municipalities, and states in some cases, just allowing the homeless to encamp in front of houses and public property, defecate, shoot up drugs, all kinds of things that are typically considered illegal. So there's a shift in tone and policy towards enforcement that signifies perhaps an about face from a more, what some would consider a more compassionate approach that offers help to the poor. So looking at the big picture, homeless rates have increased nationwide. They're up about 6% last year, but if you go back 10 years, it's just exploded. There is a shortage of affordable housing. The correlation between these issues, particularly work, money, affordable housing, is most evident in the West, where we see the highest concentration of it. Here's a good example. Hourly wage needed to afford a two-bedroom rental unit throughout the West is at least $17 an hour. In 6 Western states, pay needed to top $23 an hour. Now, if you're not working, it doesn't seem to me that really matters. Paul was pretty clear. If someone won't work, they're not going to eat. But in this case, if someone won't work, they're not going to be able to afford any kind of housing, whether it's affordable or not. So what do we need to do? Well, my sense is, and I have a heart for the homeless. I've worked with the poor and homeless for a long time. My first issue with it was over 50 years ago when I was doing a jail ministry and ministered to a homeless man who would periodically get publicly drunk so he could throw in jail and have a place to stay. and that began to open my eyes up to some of the issues around it. Jesus is actually the solution. Government is not the solution. When we look at what government has been trying to do, they've messed things up royally. So we need to be compassionate. We need to help the poor, and that usually would be directly. Jesus encouraged us to give to the poor, not to the government. He did not ever advocate government being a solution. And we need to work hard to see if we can help one by one bring people to Jesus and the deliverance and salvation that he